Dragonstone smelled like salt and smoke and decisions that didn't care about comfort. The dock was slick with spray. Ropes snapped in the wind. Men strained against the weight of the cage as if they were moving a small castle with bare hands. It was iron-barred, ugly, reinforced with thicker bands at the corners, and it looked wrong here beneath carved dragons and torchlight. Too practical, too mundane for the kind of horror it was meant to hold. Jorah Mormont took one side, shoulders hunched, jaw clenched. The wind tried to shove him off balance. He shoved back. He was a man made for hard weather and harder vows, and there was a strange relief in his eyes, relief at having a purpose that didn't require smiling at court. Jon Snow took the other side. His hands closed around the iron, and the metal warmed under his palms just enough to raise a faint thread of steam. No one said a word about it. No one wanted to be the one to admit they noticed. Davos Seaworth barked at sailors until they moved faster, until knots were tied right the first time. "If this thing breaks loose on deck, you'll all be dead before you can piss yourselves," he snapped, and the men obeyed because Davos sounded like the sea when it was tired of being argued with. Daenerys Targaryen watched from the dock's edge with Tyrion Lannister beside her. Missandei stood close, calm as ever. Grey Worm was a step behind, his stillness sharp enough to cut. Unsullied lined the dock in silent formation. Bronze helms turned toward Jon like watchful blades. Samwell Tarly lingered near the ship's gangplank with Gilly and her baby tucked in close, his satchel heavy with scrolls and proof. He looked like a man who had run too far on too little sleep, but his eyes were bright with stubborn intent. "You don't have to go," Sam said to Jon when Jon paused to wipe wet hair from his eyes. The words were soft, but they carried. "You've already convinced her enough to mine dragonglass." Jon glanced toward Daenerys. The queen's gaze met his, unreadable, and the air between them felt tight as rope. "No," Jon said quietly. "I haven't."
Sam swallowed.
"Then at least take this," he said, thrusting a rolled parchment into Jon's hand. "For Lady Sansa Stark, and for yourself." His voice dropped. "If it comes to that." Jon's fingers tightened around the parchment. He did not ask what Sam meant. There were too many meanings now, and every one of them felt like a knife. Gilly shifted her baby higher and looked at Jon with wide eyes. "Don't die," she said simply. Jon's mouth tightened. "I'll try," he answered, and hated the weakness of it. A shadow passed over the water. Jon looked up and saw Drogon's silhouette cut across low cloud, wings slow, enormous. The dragon did not land. He circled once as if counting the ship, then vanished into gray. Daenerys's gaze flicked skyward, possessive and tense. When she looked back at Jon, her voice was calm but edged. "Bring me what you promised," she said. "Proof that forces the world to open its eyes." Jon nodded once. "And when I do," he said, "you come north." Daenerys's eyes narrowed. "When I see," she corrected. "Then I decide." Grey Worm's hand tightened on his spear shaft. Jorah's gaze stayed on Jon, steady. "We sail," he said simply, because some men understood timing better than speeches. The gangplank thudded into place. Ropes were cast off. Sails rose, snapping. The ship pulled away from Dragonstone's black stone teeth and into gray water. Jon watched the dock shrink, watched Daenerys become a dark shape against torchlight, watched the dragon's fortress fade into mist. He had left Winterfell to bring back weapons. Now he was leaving Dragonstone to bring back a monster. And somewhere far to the north, the cold waited, patient as death. Eastwatch by the sea felt like the world's edge made into a habit. The wall rose behind it like a frozen god, white, vast, silent, its surface catching what little light the sky offered and throwing it back without warmth. The sea at its base was a half-frozen mouth that chewed black water and coughed up ice. Ships sat like stubborn beasts against the dock, crusted with rime. Jon stepped onto the planks and felt the wall before he looked at it. Not with eyes, with his scars. With the heat under his ribs answering something buried deep in the ice. For a heartbeat the air around him seemed to tighten, and the torches along the dock flickered as if leaning toward him. Jon forced his breathing steady. Smoke curled faintly from his mouth. He pretended it was only cold. Tormund Giantsbane came stomping down the dock as if he owned it, beard full of frost, eyes bright. Free folk followed behind him, hard faces watching Jorah Mormont with open curiosity and watching the black-sailed ship's southern men with a wariness that had teeth. "Well," Tormund boomed, spreading his arms. "The crows come back from his dragon queen." Jon's mouth tightened. "I'm not here to talk," he said. Tormund's grin faded a fraction. He saw it in Jon's face, something hard and urgent. He rumbled. "Then it's worse." Edison Tollett stood near the gate with a handful of black brothers, thin as a nail, eyes tired. He looked at Jon as if Jon's return from death was the only thing keeping the world from tipping over completely. "We've had things," Ed said dryly. "Reports, missing men, screams in the night, all the usual joys." Jon glanced toward the stacked crates near the sleds. Dragonglass, black and gleaming even under frost. Men moved around them carefully, as if the stone might bite. "Where's the trouble?" Jon asked. Tormund spat onto the ice. "Out there," he said, jerking his chin north beyond the gate. "The night's got teeth now. The dead move like they're being led." Jorah's voice was quiet beside Jon. "White walkers," he said, as if naming them could make them smaller. Tormund's gaze flicked to Jorah, measuring. "And you're the bear who follows the dragon queen," he said. "You look like you've bled enough to belong here." Jorah didn't smile. "I've bled for worse reasons," he said. Davos Seaworth stepped forward, boots slipping slightly on ice. "We're taking a small party beyond the wall," he said bluntly. "We need a Wight, alive." The Black brothers stared as if Davos had said he wanted to capture the moon. A free folk woman barked a laugh that held no humor. Ed's lips twitched. "Alive," he echoed. "That's the part I'm most looking forward to." Jon looked up at the wall. The ice seemed to hum faintly, like a throat holding a secret. He could feel the buried heat under it, the old pulse that had reached for him when he died. It answered him now with a slow, steady pressure, like a hand on his chest. "We don't go far," Jon said. "We don't chase anything. We find stragglers, we trap one, we drag it back, and we leave." Tormund's grin returned, sharp. "A simple stroll," he said. "Just you, me, the bear, and the walking dead." It cleared his throat. "I assume this is the part where I pretend I'm not terrified." Jon glanced at him. "You coming?" Ed's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. "If I say no," he said, "I'll have to stay here and listen to you lot brag about it." "That sounds worse." A gust hit hard, slamming cold into faces. The torches snapped. The wall loomed. Jon felt the cold beyond the gate like an ache at the edge of his mind. He could almost taste it, ice and old death. He looked at Tormund. "Pick the men," Jon said. "The ones who can move fast and keep quiet." Tormund's expression turned grim. "Quiet's not our best," he admitted. "But we'll manage." Jon turned toward the gate as if the decision had been made the moment he stepped onto the dock. "Then we go," he said. And as the gate began to open, the wall groaned. A low, deep sound that made Jon's scars warm, as if the ice itself recognized that fire was walking out. Beyond the wall, sound died first. The wind swallowed voices. Snow muffled footsteps. Even the clink of gear seemed quieter, as if the world itself didn't want to be noticed. The land was a wide, white emptiness broken by dead trees that clawed at the sky and stones half buried like old bones. Jon led because leading was the only way he knew to keep fear from turning into panic. Tormund strode a step behind him, huge and loud even when he tried to be quiet. Jorah Mormont moved like a man who had learned how to survive deserts and cities and now had to teach his body new rules for ice. Edison Tollett trudged with the resigned expression of a man walking toward his own funeral because it was on the schedule. The others were a mix. Free folk who knew the haunted forest's moods and black brothers who had seen too much to laugh about it anymore. Dragonglass spearheads gleamed dully where they were lashed to shafts. A few men carried nets and chains. The iron cage came last on a sled, dragged by two sturdy wildlings who grunted with every step. Jon felt the cold at the edge of his mind like a pressure. Not the cold of weather, the cold of something watching, waiting. He kept telling himself it was memory, instinct, trauma. But then he saw the lights. Far ahead, through the dead trees, faint blue flickers moved like distant stars. They were too steady to be fire and too cold to be moonlight. Tormund saw them too and spat, face twisting. "White walkers," he muttered. Jorah's hand tightened on his sword. "How far?" he asked Jon quietly. Jon's scars tingled, warming faintly as if answering a silent call. "Far enough," Jon said. "We don't chase them." It huffed. "Good," he said. "I was worried we might have a hobby." They pushed deeper, keeping to dips and hollows where the wind cut less. The day felt like twilight even at noon. Cloud cover smothered the sun. Breath froze on beards, fingers numbed. Yet Jon did not feel the bite the same way the others did. The cold brushed him and slid off, frustrated. Heat sat under his skin like coals banked, and he hated how useful it was. Useful things always asked for payment. Tormund stumbled once and recovered with a curse. "Your queen's men will die out here," he muttered to Jon. "The bronze helmet ones. They don't know this cold." "She's not sending them," Jon said. Tormund grunted. "Smart, for once." Jorah's gaze flicked to Jon. "She will come," he said quietly, not as reassurance, but as conviction. "If she sees what you bring." Jon didn't answer. He watched the dead trees sway, watched snow drift across footprints too quickly, watched the horizon for movement that wasn't wind. Hours blurred. The group stopped briefly to drink water that tasted of metal and cold. The sled creaked. The cage clinked softly as chains shifted. Somewhere far off, a raven cried. A single harsh sound, then silence again. Then the wind changed. It brought a smell that didn't belong. Rot, faint but undeniable, like old. Meat left too long in snow. Men stiffened. Dragonglass points lifted. Tormund's hand went to his axe. Jon raised a fist, signaling stillness. The dead trees ahead were too quiet. No birds, no rustle, no living movement. Even the wind seemed reluctant to touch that patch of forest. A low clicking sound came, teeth striking teeth. Ed's voice was a whisper. "That," he said, "is not encouraging." Jon's breath smoked thickly as he drew Longclaw. The Valyrian steel looked darker in this light, as if it drank the gray. He felt warmth seep faintly into the blade, and he forced it down. Not now, not yet. He glanced at the cage on the sled. "Remember," he murmured, "we take one. We leave." Tormund's grin was gone. He said softly. "One." The rot smell grew stronger, and then shapes moved between the dead trees, jerking, unnatural, too many limbs at wrong angles. The first Wight stepped into view with blue eyes burning like ice-lit coals. Jon's grip tightened. "Now," he whispered, and the word was not a prayer. It was a command to the living. The first Wight came fast, arms flailing, mouth open in a soundless scream. Its skin was gray-blue, stretched tight over bone. Frost clung to its lashes. Its eyes burned the wrong kind of life. Jon met it with Longclaw. Valyrian steel cut through dead flesh like cloth. The Wight's head separated cleanly and fell into snow, rolling, jaw still clicking. The body kept moving for half a heartbeat, then collapsed as if a string had been cut. Jorah Mormont stepped in beside Jon, dragonglass in hand. He drove the black point into a Wight's throat, and the dead thing shattered, literally shattered, breaking into brittle ice and dust that scattered on the wind. Jorah's face tightened with grim satisfaction. Proof in action. Tormund Giant's Bane bellowed and swung his axe, splitting a skull. "Stay down!" He roared at the dead as if shouting could make them obey. Edison Tollett looked like a man in a nightmare he had predicted for years. He stabbed with dragonglass awkwardly, cursing under his breath. "I hate this," he muttered as he kicked a Wight off his blade. "I hate this so much." More shapes poured from the trees. 10, 15. then more, moving in jerking unison. The living formed a rough circle, backs to backs, breath steaming. Dragonglass flashed.
Stilrang.
Snow churned into slush beneath frantic boots. Jon's mind narrowed to motion and timing. He hacked at wrists, took knees, cut throats that did not bleed. The dead did not tire. They did not hesitate. They threw themselves onto blades with mindless patience. Then Jon felt it. A cold presence behind the Wights, deeper than the rot smell, deeper than the clicking teeth. He turned his head slightly and saw him. A Wight walker stood among the trees as if the forest belonged to him. His armor looked like cracked ice catching dim light. In his hand he held a spear of frozen glass. His face was calm, almost curious, blue eyes bright. The Wights moved like extensions of his will. Jon's scars warmed, and the heat in his chest surged in anger. It wanted to lash out. It wanted to answer cold with fire. He forced it down. If Jon killed the Wight Walker, the Wights would drop like puppets with cut strings. That would be a victory and a failure. They needed one alive. For proof, Tormund saw the Walker too and spat. "There," he growled. "That one's the mind." Jorah's eyes narrowed. "If we kill it, we lose them," Jon snapped, and the bluntness cut through the fight like a shouted order. "We need one moving." Ed's voice was strained. "That implies we're going to choose which one doesn't try to murder us," he said. Jon shoved a Wight back with his shoulder. "Nets," he barked. "Chains ready. We take the next one that breaks from the pack." Two free folk dragged the net forward, its rope stiff with frost. A black brother fumbled with chain links, hands shaking. The Wight Walker tilted its head slightly, as if listening to their plan. For a heartbeat, Jon felt the Walker's gaze brush his skin.
Get a knife.
Cold recognition. Then the Walker lifted its spear and made a small, precise motion. The Wights surged harder. They hit the living line like a wave of dead flesh. A free folk man went down beneath three bodies, screaming. Dragonglass flashed. Wights shattered. The man crawled out, bleeding, shaking, alive by inches. Jon swung Longclaw in a wide arc, clearing space, and his breath came out as smoke thick enough to taste. Heat rose off him in a subtle shimmer. A Wight lunged at him and hesitated for half a heartbeat, as if confused by warmth where only cold should be. Jon seized the moment. "Now!" he shouted. The net flew. It caught one Wight mid-lunge, rope wrapping around limbs. The dead thing thrashed, snapping, teeth clacking. Men threw themselves onto the net, dragging it down. Chains clinked as they wrapped iron around dead wrists and ankles. The Wight screamed, silent but violent, its blue eyes burning. The Wight Walker's gaze sharpened. Took one step forward, spear rising. Jon's heart hammered. "Move!" he barked. "Back to the sled." They hauled the netted Wight across snow, dragging it like a caught wolf. The dead thing flailed, snapping at anything close. Its nails tore at rope until dragonglass splinters cut its fingers off, and still it reached. The Wight Walker moved forward through the trees, calm as a king, and the Wights followed. Jon felt the cold behind them like a tide rising. They had their prize. Now they had to survive carrying it. The Wight fought like hunger-given hands. It snapped at the air, teeth clacking so hard Jon feared they would break. Its limbs jerked against chains with unnatural strength. The rope net burned into dead flesh as men dragged it across snow, and still the thing reached for throats as if it could taste warmth. "Get it in!" Tormund roared, slamming his axe into a Wight skull and booting the body aside. Before more of them come, more of them were already coming. Wights poured from the dead trees behind, driven forward by the Wight Walker's calm, relentless advance. The Walker did not hurry. It didn't need to. Every step it took seemed to pull winter tighter around it, tightening the air, sharpening breath. Jorah Mormont staggered, blood streaking his cheek where a dead nail had raked him. He wiped at it with a gloved thumb, eyes hard. "If that wound freezes," he started. "It won't," Jon said without thinking, and his voice carried more certainty than he had any right to offer. He didn't know whether he meant Jorah would survive or whether he meant Jon's own heat would stop the cold from winning here. Either way, it was a promise. They reached the sled. The iron cage loomed. Ugly, heavy, reinforced with extra bars. Davos had insisted on it, cursing the whole idea while building it. Now it looked too small, too fragile, for the furious dead thing thrashing in chains. Edison Tollett grabbed the cage door, hands shaking. "I can't believe this is my life," he muttered, voice thin. Jon and Jorah hauled the netted Wight up, muscles straining. The dead thing kicked and writhed, snapping at Jon's wrist. Its teeth scraped iron chain instead, sparks jumping. "Hold!" Jon barked, and men pinned the Wight's shoulders down with spear shafts. Tormund shoved another Wight back, then turned and slammed his whole weight into the netted corpse, driving it toward the open cage. "In," he snarled, as if forcing a stubborn goat into a pen. The Wight's blue eyes fixed on Jon's face. For a heartbeat, Jon felt something in those eyes. Empty hunger, yes, but also a thin thread of recognition, as if the dead could smell the fire in him and hated it. Then it lunged. Jon caught it by the chain and hurled it into the cage. The dead thing hit iron bars hard enough to rattle the sled. It thrashed, clawing at bars, snapping its teeth at nothing. It slammed the cage door shut and shoved the iron bolt into place with both hands. The lock clicked. The sound was small, ridiculous, against the roar of approaching death. For a heartbeat, the living froze, breath steaming, eyes wide, staring at the cage as if expecting it to melt or explode. Then the White Walker stepped out of the trees into open snow. It raised its spear. The temperature dropped so abruptly Jon felt it even through his inner heat. Men gasped. Frost formed on eyelashes. The torches on the sled, small oil lamps rigged for light, guttered, flames shrinking. Jon's scars flared hot in response. An involuntar. Edifaians. Steam rose faintly off his skin. The White Walker's gaze locked onto Jon. Jon felt the stare like a hand around his throat, cold and certain. The Walker tilted its head slightly, as if curious. Then it moved its spear in a small, precise arc. The Wights surged again, faster, more furious. "Run!" Jon shouted. They dragged the sled forward at a lurching pace, boots slipping, shoulders straining. The cage rattled behind them with the captured Wights' relentless thrashing. The dead pursued, feet silent in snow, arms outstretched, mouths open. Jorah stumbled, caught himself, and kept going, teeth bared. Tormund swung his axe over his shoulder without slowing, cleaving a Wight that got too close. Ed ran with a kind of grim panic, eyes wide, muttering prayers he didn't believe. Jon ran at the rear, Longclaw cutting down anything that reached for the sled. His breath smoked thickly now. Heat rippled off him in faint waves, and Wights that lunged closest seemed to hesitate. Half a heartbeat of confusion, before hunger overrode whatever instinct had warned them away. It wasn't enough. The dead were too many. The White Walker was too calm. Ahead, the land dipped toward a frozen lake, a wide sheet of ice half covered in snow. Jon's mind snapped to the only thing that mattered. They needed space. They needed time. And the dead did not give either. The lake saved them by making them helpless. They reached the ice at a run, dragging the sled until their shoulders screamed. The frozen sheet looked solid beneath snow, safe in the way only traps looked safe. They rushed across it anyway, because Wights were at their backs and fear made choice into instinct. Halfway across, the ice groaned. A deep, ugly sound rolled up through boots and bones. Men froze for half a heartbeat, then ran harder, because stopping on cracking ice was worse than dying to claws. They reached a rocky outcropping rising from the lake like a black tooth and clambered up, hauling the sled after them. The iron cage scraped stone. The captured Wight shrieked silently and slammed itself against bars until the cage rang. Behind them, the ice split. A line cracked open with a sound like thunder. Black water surged up. Two pursuing Wights went through without a splash, vanishing beneath, then clawed up the edge like spiders, blue eyes still burning. The living hacked them apart, forcing the dead back into water. Then the Wights stopped. Hundreds of them gathered at the ice edge, packed together in a silent mass, blue eyes glowing across the lake like a field of cold stars. They did not rush onto the broken ice. They did not flail. They waited. At the far shore, the White Walker stood still, spear upright, watching as if he had all the time in the world. Tormund spat blood and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "They're waiting for it to freeze," he growled. Edison Talit shook so hard his teeth clicked. "That's considerate," he said weakly. Jorah knelt near the cage, breathing hard, one hand pressed to his side where a Wight's nails had torn through leather. His blood looked too bright against black stone. He glanced up at Jon, eyes fierce. "We can't stay," he rasped. Jon stood at the outcropping's edge with long claw in hand, watching the white stillness. The calm was worse than frenzy. Frenzy could be broken. Calm could only be endured. His breath poured out as smoke, thicker than it had any right to be. The cold air hit his lungs and turned into heat without effort, as if his body was a forge being fed by winter itself. He could feel it now, the fire in him rising, restless, wanting out. He planted his boots on the rock and let the heat flow outward, careful, controlled. Steam rose around his calves. The ice nearest the outcropping hissed and softened, turning slick. Not enough to swallow, but enough to keep the Wights from stepping close even if they dared. Tormund noticed, eyes narrowing. "You're making it melt," he said. Jon didn't look away from the dead. "I'm keeping them back," he replied. Ed laughed once, high and miserable. "Of course you are," he said. "Why would anything ever be normal again?" The captured Wight slammed itself against the cage again, iron ringing. Its blue eyes locked on Jon through bars, hungry and hateful. Jon felt that hatred like a cold spit against his warmth. "Jo, you're proof," Jon muttered under his breath. "You're the reason we're freezing on a rock." The Wight snapped its teeth at him as if answering. Hours crawled. The Wights did not move. The wind screamed across the lake, flinging snow into faces. Men huddled close to the rock, trying to shelter their hands. Jon felt the cold less, but he saw it in the others. Lips blue, fingers stiff, eyes growing dull with exhaustion. Jorah's breathing grew shallow. Tormund's shoulders sagged between bursts of alertness. Ed muttered jokes under his breath like charms against despair. Jon stared at the far shore where the White Walker waited and felt. Suddenly, a brush of cold at the edge of his mind, like a finger tracing his name. The Night King's attention, or his servants. It didn't matter. The dead were aware. Jon's scars flared warm in defiance, and the torches they had brought, small oil lamps, burned steadier near him, flames leaning toward his heat as if grateful. They could not wait for rescue that might not come. Someone had to run. Jon turned slightly and met Tormund's gaze. "We need a raven," he said. Tormund's mouth twisted. "Ravens don't fly out here," he growled. "Not for long." "Then we need a runner," Jon said. Ed looked up, eyes wide. "No," he said quickly. "I'm very tired of running." Jon didn't smile. "Someone goes," he said, "or we die here." The Wights waited in silence, and the ice began to whisper as it slowly healed. They drew lots with trembling hands and bitter laughter that tasted like frost. Jon did not allow Jorah to go. Jorah was too valuable to die alone in snow, and too proud to admit he was weakening. Jon did not allow Ed to go, though Ed looked as if he might volunteer just to spite the universe. In the end, Tormund chose one of his own, a lean free-folk runner with sharp eyes and a mouth that did not waste breath on prayers. "Run," Tormund told him, gripping his shoulder hard enough to bruise. "Run like a giant's behind you." The runner nodded once, tied the message to his wrist, and launched himself off the rock when the wind shifted and the ice nearest them held firm enough for one man's weight. He sprinted. The Wights surged at once, as if the White Walker had been waiting for the exact moment. They poured onto the refrozen sheet, dozens at first, then hundreds, feet slapping ice without sound. The runner's boots skidded. He recovered. He ran harder. Jon stood at the rock's edge with Longclaw and fire in his veins. He thrust heat outward, melting the ice behind the runner in a rough line, turning solid into slick, cracking slush. Wights hit the softened patches and fell through, black water swallowing them, but more climbed over their bodies without hesitation. The runner became a dark speck against Wight. Jon kept pushing heat until his scars burned and his breath came out like smoke from a chimney. The ice hissed. The wind stole steam. The dead kept coming. Then the runner vanished into the dead trees, and the Wights, confused for half a heartbeat, turned back toward the rock. They did not rush. They waited again, patient, as if they knew hunger always got what it wanted in the end. Hours later, at Eastwatch, the gate guards saw a man stumble out of the forest half-frozen and still moving. They dragged him in, cut the message from his wrist, and ran it to Davos Seaworth. Davos read it once, then again, lips moving soundlessly. His face went gray. He looked up at the wall towering above and felt, for the first time in years, truly powerless. "Raven," he snapped at a black brother, voice cracking like a whip. "Now, to Dragonstone, to Daenerys Targaryen." The black brother hesitated, fear and duty wrestling in his eyes, then ran. Davos grabbed the raven himself, fingers clumsy from cold, and tied the scroll tight. The bird squawked angrily, wings beating. "Fly," Davos muttered, voice raw. "Fly, you black bastard. Fly like the world ends behind you." The raven launched into the wind, fighting, wings straining. Davos watched it vanish into gray sky and felt his stomach twist. If the raven failed, Jon died on a rock with the dead watching. If the raven succeeded, Davos did not finish the thought. He looked toward the sea and imagined dragons in northern skies, fire over ice, a queen's decision turning into fate. Back on Dragonstone, far south, Daenerys Targaryen stood on a parapet as if she had been waiting. The dragons were restless. Drogon circled lower than usual. Rhaegal and Viserion rumbled in the courtyard, claws scraping stone. Missandei brought the raven to Daenerys, breath steady. Tyrion hovered at her shoulder, eyes sharp. Daenerys broke the seal, read the message, and went very still. Tyrion watched her face. "Bad?" he asked quietly. Daenerys's jaw tightened. Her gaze lifted north, beyond sea and storm, as if she could see the frozen lake through distance alone. "They will die," she said softly, and the softness was more frightening than anger. Grey Worm stepped forward. "We cannot risk," he began. Daenerys cut him off without looking. "Prepare Drogon," she commanded. The dragons roared in answer as if they had heard Jon's name carried on the raven's wings. And far north, on a rock in a frozen lake, Jon Snow stared into blue eyes across ice and felt, in his chest, the fire coil like a beast ready to leap. The first sign was not fire. It was wind, hot wind cutting through cold air like a blade. Jon looked up as the Wights began to surge again, and for a heartbeat the gray sky above the lake seemed to darken, as if cloud had thickened. Then he saw wings. Drogon dropped out of cloud like a falling star made of night. Behind him came two more shadows, Rhaegal and Viserion, circling wide, their wings stirring the air into a violent storm. The sight hit Jon's chest like a fist. Relief and dread tangled so hard he could not tell them apart. Daenerys Targaryen rode Drogon like she was part of him. Cloak snapping, posture rigid, face carved from fury. The dragon's shadows passed over the lake, and the Wights reacted like ants under a boot. They looked up. They hissed silently. They surged forward anyway, because hunger did not fear sky. Drogon breathed. Dragonfire slammed into the ice in a roaring column of black-red flame, melting, boiling, turning Wights into ash and steam in a heartbeat. The heat hit Jon's face like a slap. The ice hissed violently. The dead shrieked without sound and burned anyway. Rhaegal and Viserion joined, their flames different shades, green gold and pale hot, lashing the ice, tearing holes into the lake, swallowing Wights in boiling water. For a heartbeat, the dead were nothing but fuel. Jon turned and shouted over the roar, "To the dragons! He grabbed the cage's iron bars, and heat surged into his hands. The cage warmed. Steam rose. Tormund and two free folk shoved with him, muscles straining. Jorah staggered to help, one arm hanging wrong, face pale but eyes fierce. Above, Daenerys screamed commands in Valyrian, voice carried by wind and rage. The dragons responded like storms. Jon's scars flared warm in the Dragonfire's presence. His breath smoked thickly even in the heat. They dragged the cage across ice toward the rock's edge where a thinner sheet remained. Drogon hovered low, wings beating, air thundering. Daenerys leaned down, eyes locked on Jon. Anger and relief braided. "Move!" she shouted, voice torn by wind. Wights surged again, climbing over melted gaps, bodies dropping into boiling water and crawling out anyway, charred and still reaching. Jon hacked with Longclaw one-handed, cutting dead wrists, shoving burning corpses back. Then Jon felt it. A cold presence like a hand closing around his spine. He turned his head toward the far shore and saw him standing there like the world's end given shape. The Night King. He did not flinch from Dragonfire. He did not hurry. He watched, calm and patient, as if this were a lesson he had already learned. In his hand, he held a spear of ice. The spear rose slowly. Jon's throat went dry. "Daenerys?" He tried to shout, but the roar of dragons ate his voice. The Night King drew his arm back. Time stretched the way it had when Ramsay Bolton loosed an arrow at Rickon. The same sick helplessness, the same awful certainty. The spear flew. It cut through air with a whisper, a streak of pale death against gray sky. Jon saw it aimed not at Drogon, at Viserion. Viserion banked, flames still pouring, and the spear struck deep into the dragon's chest. For a heartbeat, the world went silent inside Jon's skull. Viserion screamed. The sound was not like any beast's cry. It was metal tearing and thunder breaking and something ancient dying. The dragon's wings faltered. Flames sputtered. The great body tilted. Viserion crashed into the lake with a sound like mountains falling. Ice exploded. Black water swallowed gold scales. Steam roared up, then faded into horrified silence. Daenerys' scream tore through the wind, raw, unfiltered grief. Drogon roared in answer, fury shaking the sky. Rhaegal screamed too, circling madly. Jon's scars burned as if branded. He felt something snap inside his chest, an invisible thread tightening and then tearing like a rope cut under strain. It wasn't his dragon, yet the pain hit him like it was. The Night King stood on the far shore, unmoved, watching the lake swallow the dragon. Then he lifted one hand slightly, and the Wights surged again, because death never wasted a victory. The rescue became chaos the moment grief touched the sky. Daenerys hauled survivors up onto Drogon's back with desperate hands, shouting commands that barely sounded like words. Jorah clambered first, face twisted with pain, but he moved because Daenerys was there and Jorah Mormont had been built from loyalty that refused to die. Tormund shoved the iron cage forward, roaring at men to help. The cage scraped ice. The captured Wight inside slammed itself against bars, rattling iron like a drum, blue eyes burning as if delighted by the slaughter around it. "Leave it!" someone screamed. "No!" Jon shouted back, voice raw. "That's the point." They heaved the cage toward a rope line thrown down from the cliff path where dragons could not land. Men hooked the cage's iron rings, and the rope went taut, creaking under weight. Wights surged across the refreezing lake in waves, bodies piling into gaps, making bridges of dead flesh the way rivers made bridges of ice. They did not care how many fell. They only cared about hands on throats. Rhaegal swooped low, breathing fire, turning clusters of Wights into ash. Drogon snapped his jaws and scorched the ice again, but the dead kept coming, climbing over burning bodies like insects over coals. Daenerys reached down from Drogon's saddle, eyes wild. "Jon!" she screamed, and the sound cut through smoke and wind like a blade. Jon turned toward her and saw her hand extended. He also saw Tormund struggling with the cage line. He saw Ed stumbling, nearly pulled down by a Wight grabbing his ankle. He saw a free folk man go under, arms flailing, swallowed by dead hands. Jon's fire surged, hot and furious. His scars burned. He wanted to burn the lake. He wanted to melt the dead into nothing. He didn't have time. He hacked a Wight's arm off and shoved Ed forward. "Go!" he roared. "Go!" Ed stumbled toward the rope line, eyes wide with terror. "I hate you," he gasped. And then he was running because he wanted to live. Tormund grabbed Jon's shoulder hard. "Crow!" he bellowed. "Move!" Jon looked back once, toward the far shore where the Night King stood like a statue carved from winter. The Night King's blue eyes were fixed on Jon now, cold and certain. Jon felt that gaze like a hook. Then Jon lunged. He ran toward Drogon, boots slipping on ice, breath smoking. Wights grabbed at his cloak. He tore free. A Wight lunged for his throat. Jon drove Longclaw through its face and kept moving. Daenerys leaned lower, stretching dangerously far. Drogon rumbled, wings beating hard to keep balance. Jon jumped. For a heartbeat, he hung between ice and sky. Daenerys' hand caught his forearm, iron grip. Jon felt strength in her, strength born of storms and dragons and loss. She hauled. Drogon's back heaved under them. Jon's boots found scale and leather. He climbed up behind her, chest heaving, eyes burning. Below, the rope line lifted the cage and its thrashing Wight into the air, swinging over boiling holes in icy. Men screamed as Wights grabbed at their ankles, pulling them down. Tormund fought like a beast, axe hacking, blood and ice flying. "Jump!" Jon roared at him, voice cracking. Tormund turned, eyes wild, and hurled himself toward the rope line at the last second as dead hands grabbed for him. He caught the rope, swinging, boots kicking. The Night King raised a hand slightly. The Wights surged higher, faster, almost joyful. Drogon beat his wings once, twice, lifting into air. As they rose, Jon looked down and saw the lake filled with dead, blue eyes like a field of stars. He saw Viserion's impact crater, black water churning, steam fading. Daenerys' shoulders shook. Jon could feel it through her posture. Grief held tight, rage barely leashed. Rhaegal circled above them, screaming, furious and afraid. Drogon roared, and the sound shook Jon's ribs. They climbed into cloud, leaving the lake and the dead behind. But Jon knew, with a certainty that tasted like ash, that they had not left the worst behind. They had left a dragon in the dark. They saw it only because Jon could not stop looking back. Above the cloud line, the wind was colder, thinner, sharper. Drogon's wings beat slow and heavy, hauling them south. Daenerys sat rigid in the saddle, hands clenched, face pale. Her grief was a silence you could feel, and her rage was a storm she was forcing herself not to unleash. Jon sat behind her, holding on not because he feared falling, but because he needed the pressure of something real. His breath smoked into the wind. His scars burned like coals touched by a cruel hand. He looked down through a break in cloud and saw the frozen lake shrinking below, an ugly scar of dark water and churned ice. And then he saw movement. The Wights did not disperse. They swarmed the lake's center like ants around a fallen god. Chains appeared, thick, dark links hauled from nowhere, dragged across ice by dead hands that did not tire. The chains disappeared into the black water where Viserion had fallen. Jon's stomach tightened. He felt the cold at the edge of his mind sharpen, like a blade turned toward him. Daenerys did not look back. She couldn't. Jon understood. Looking back was admitting it was real. Jon kept looking anyway. The chains went taut. Wights leaned back in unison, dozens at first, then hundreds, pulling with mindless strength. The lake groaned. The ice cracked. Black water surged. Then something huge shifted beneath the surface. A golden shape rose slowly from the depths, dragged upward by dead hands and iron chain. Viserion's body emerged in pieces at first. One wing limp and heavy, then a shoulder ridge, then a head lolling sideways as if asleep. The sight hit Jon like a physical blow. His chest tightened. His scars flared hot, then cold. as if his body couldn't decide whether to burn or freeze. On the far shore, the Night King stood unmoving, one hand lifted in calm command. Viserion's body slid fully onto the ice with a wet, grinding sound. Water poured off gold scales. The dragon's wings lay broken. The great neck sagged. For a heartbeat, the dragon looked like nothing more than dead flesh. Beautiful, terrible, finished. Then the Night King raised his hand slightly higher. Wights went still. A pulse moved through the air, cold and sharp, like a sudden wind that did not touch cloud. Jon felt it even up here, a distant pressure at the edge of his mind that made his breath catch. Viserion's head jerked. Slowly, impossibly, the dragon's neck straightened. Blue light seeped into his throat, glowing beneath wet scales like ice-lit fire. The glow spread upward, filling the hollow spaces behind ribs, crawling through veins like winter writing its name into flesh. Then Viserion's eyes snapped open. Bright blue, the same blue as white eyes, the same blue as White Walker's gaze, the same blue as the Night King's cold certainty. Jon's breath hitched so hard smoke spilled from his mouth like a cough. For an instant he tasted ash and salt and old fear. He felt something inside him, the fire that had answered dragons. Recoil and then surge, furious, as if insulted. On Drogon's back he felt the dragon stiffen. Drogon's wings beat harder. A low rumble rolled from the great throat, uneasy and enraged. Daenerys finally turned her head, as if the sound of Drogon's rumble forced her to look. She saw. Her face went very still. Her eyes widened. A sound left her mouth, small and broken, and then she clamped her jaw shut like a queen swallowing a scream. Viserion lifted his head and roared. The sound rose through cloud like a wound opening. It was not the roar of a living dragon. It was thinner, colder, wrong, like wind screaming through a cave. Jon stared down at the undead dragon and felt the Night King's gaze lift again, as if he could see through distance and cloud and dragon wings. Jon felt it lock onto him. The cold pressure at the edge of his mind sharpened into recognition. Winter had felt his fire. Now winter had stolen a dragon. Drogon climbed higher, fleeing south with desperate wing beats. But Jon knew the truth as surely as he knew his own name. The war had changed. The enemy had learned to ride fire with ice. And Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, fire-returned king, dragon-touched man, had just watched the world's balance tilt toward darkness. He turned his face into the wind and let his breath smoke out like a vow. "We'll burn you," he whispered into the cloud. Not to Daenerys, not to Drogon, but to the cold itself. "We'll burn you in the end." Below, the Night King stood beside his new weapon and watched the dragons vanish into sky, patient as death. And somewhere inside Jon's chest, the fire coiled tighter, no longer curious, only hungry. Dragonstone greeted them with rain like needles and a silence that felt wrong for a fortress built to worship fire. Drogon hit the dock with a thunder of claws that made boards shudder and men flinch. The great black wings folded, dripping, and the dragon's head lowered once as if tasting the air for what was missing. His rumble was deep, uneasy. Jon felt it in his ribs like grief-given sound. Daenerys slid down from the saddle without grace. Her boots struck wet planks, and for a heartbeat she stood there, swaying, hands clenched at her sides as if her body did not remember how to hold itself when a dragon was gone. Rain ran down her face and made her eyes shine too much. She did not wipe it away. Queens did not wipe away storms. Jon climbed down behind her, hands slick on leather, breath smoking in the warm, wet air. His scars burned faintly beneath skin, as if the Dragonfire still lived there, as if the sky itself had branded him with what he had seen. Jorah Mormont came down last, teeth bared against pain, his arm wrapped in cloth already darkening with blood. He landed hard, then steadied himself because he refused to fall in front of her. Tyrion and Missandei pushed through the tight formation of Unsullied. Grey Worm's posture was rigid, his face carved from fury and fear he would never admit. Missandei's eyes went to Daenerys' face, and something in her softened. as if she had learned long ago that the strongest people sometimes broke in silence. Regal screamed overhead, circling low enough that the air churned. The sound was wild, rage and loss braided, a living dragon's fury at the world's theft. Drogon answered with a roar that rattled the dock's iron rings, and for a heartbeat every torch flame leaned with the wind as if the island itself listened. Then the iron cage swung into view, dangling from a rope crane like a dark, ugly bell. Inside, the Wight thrashed. It slammed its dead body into bars hard enough to make iron ring. Blue eyes burned in the cage's shadow, hungry and furious, mouth clacking teeth like stones. Chains wrapped its limbs, but it did not care. It reached anyway, fingers clawing at air as if air itself might bleed. Men backed away instinctively, unsullied spears tilted a fraction. Sailors made signs against bad luck without thinking. Even on Dragonstone, where dragons slept on stone ledges, the sight of a dead thing that refused to die dragged old fear out of men's bellies. Daenerys's gaze snapped to the cage, and something in her expression tightened. Rage sliding over grief like armor. She stepped closer, rain snapping off her cloak, eyes narrowed at the thrashing proof as if she could punish the world by staring hard enough. Jon felt the Wights' hatred like cold spittle, but beneath it he felt something else. Faint, distant, like a thread pulled tight. The dead had felt him. The dead had marked him. The Night King's gaze had been a hook, and the hook was still in him. Tyrion spoke carefully, voice low-eye, in Daenerys's ear. "We have it," he said, as if naming success might make it real enough to balance the loss. Daenerys did not look at him. "We lost him," she whispered instead, and the softness of it made Jon's throat tighten. Not Viserion, not a weapon, him like a person. The Wight slammed into the bars again, shrieking without sound. Daenerys's hand rose, trembling, then clenched into a fist. Her eyes lifted north as if she could see through rain and stone and distance to the frozen lake where a dragon had died. "Bring it inside," she commanded, voice suddenly hard. "Now!" The Unsullied moved at once. The cage swung toward the dock, dripping black water and rain. The dead thing inside fought like hunger trapped in iron. Jon watched it and felt his fire coil, not curious now, not uncertain, only determined. They had proof, and they had paid for it in dragon blood. They made a circle around the cage, as if a circle could make an iron certainty out of fear. Dragonstone's courtyard echoed with the scrape of boots and the low murmur of men trying not to admit what their eyes were seeing. Unsullied stood in disciplined ranks, bronze helms turned toward the cage. Dothraki gathered at the outer edge, hands resting on rocks, faces hard, but their horses shifted nervously at the stink of rot. The cage sat on black stone like a wound nailed down. Inside it, the Wight threw itself against bars again and again, mouth snapping, blue eyes burning. Each impact rang through the courtyard like a hammer strike. Daenerys stood on the steps above, rainwater still clinging to her cloak. Her face was pale, her eyes dark. Tyrion watched the crowd, measuring what this would do to them, whether proof would become conviction or panic. Missandei's calm held the space around her like a quiet wall. Grey Worm stepped forward with a dragonglass spear in hand. The black point looked too small to matter, and yet everyone in the courtyard watched it like a key. Jon stood near the cage, close enough to feel the dead thing's cold hate through iron. Jorah Mormont was beside him, one arm bound, the other steady on his sword hilt. His jaw was clenched in the way men clenched when pain became background noise. Daenerys's voice carried clearly. "You wanted proof," she said, and the words were for her own army as much as they were for the world that would one day hear. "This is proof." The Wights slammed into the bars and reached through them, fingers clawing, nails blackened. A Dothraki man flinched despite himself. An Unsullied did not flinch, but his spear tip dipped a fraction, instinct tugging at discipline. Jon stepped closer to the cage and spoke without raising his voice. "It doesn't feel," he said. "It doesn't bargain. It doesn't stop." His breath smoked faintly. "It only takes." A few men shifted, uncomfortable at the way smoke left a man's mouth in warm rain. Tyrion's eyes flicked to Jon, then away. Daenerys lifted her chin. "Grey Worm," she commanded. Grey Worm's face was stone. He moved to the cage and jabbed the dragonglass point through a gap between bars, aiming for the Wight's shoulder. The dead thing snapped at the spear, teeth scraping obsidian with a sound like flint striking flint. Grey Worm thrust. The dragonglass pierced dead flesh, and the Wight convulsed violently. It did not bleed. It did not cry. It shattered instead, its shoulder collapsing into brittle fragments, black dust and icy shards scattering inside the cage, as if the dead had been made of wrong glass all along. The Wight screamed soundlessly, thrashing harder, but the wound did not heal. The proof was immediate and ugly. A ripple ran through the courtyard. Shock, then murmurs, then a hush that tasted like dawning understanding. Daenerys's voice tightened. "This is what we face," she said. "An enemy that cannot be bribed. An enemy that cannot be tend. An enemy that will rise again unless you burn it or you break it with this." Grey Worm withdrew the spear. The Wight kept fighting, but its arm hung wrong now, half missing, black dust clinging to iron bars. Jorah stepped forward, eyes fixed on the Wight. "This is not a tale," he said, voice hoarse. "We saw it. We fought it. We barely lived." A Dothraki man spat and muttered in his language. Anger and fear braided together. One of the Unsullied's breathing changed, small, quick, human. Then steadied again. Daenerys looked down at the cage as if looking could punish it. "The dead are real," she said. The sentence landed like a verdict. "And they will come for all of us." The Wight surged again, snapping at the bars, rattling chains. It fixed its burning eyes on Daenerys and reached toward her as if drawn by the heat of power. Jon felt the dead's hunger spike, and something in him answered, heat tightening under his ribs, a low, angry readiness. The torches around the courtyard flared briefly, leaning toward Jon as if they heard his pulse. A few men noticed and stepped back without knowing why. Above, Drogon rumbled, and Rhaegal answered with a shorter, sharper sound. Daenerys's eyes lifted to the dragons for a heartbeat, and grief crossed her face like a shadow, Viserion's absence hanging in the air like an empty space no fire could fill. Then her gaze returned to Jon, hard and bright. "You will take this proof to my enemy," she said. Jon's jaw tightened. "To Cersei Lannister." Daenerys nodded once. "To the world," she corrected, and the Wight, thrashing in iron, seemed to grin with its empty hunger, as if delighted to be carried into the heart of men's pride. Night on Dragonstone was warm, and that made grief feel sharper. Daenerys sat in the throne room long after the court had thinned, long after Grey Worm had tried to convince her to rest and Missandei had offered quiet words that could not fill the hole in the sky. The black stone around her held heat like a secret. The torches burned steady, obedient. The room smelled of smoke and salt and old power. On the stone beside her lay a single scale, black at one edge, blue-tinged along another where cold magic had kissed it. It was small in her palm, and that smallness was an insult. 3 dragons had filled the world for her. Now one was reduced to a shard of proof that fire could be stolen. Her fingers trembled when she turned the scale. The tremor was the only crack she allowed. Tyrion stood a respectful distance away, hands clasped behind his back, posture careful. He had seen kings and queens break in private and then rise in public like nothing had happened. He watched her now the way a man watched a storm line on the horizon, knowing it would hit whether he spoke or not. Jon Snow entered without being announced. The Unsullied at the doors did not stop him. They had learned the Queen's rules bent when she didn't know how to name what she felt. Jon stepped into torchlight, breath smoking, eyes dark with exhaustion that did not look like fatigue so much as weight. Daenerys did not look up at once. "You brought me proof," she said quietly. "And it cost me a dragon." Jon swallowed. "It cost all of us," he said, but the words sounded weak against the truth. He stepped closer, then stopped because distance mattered with queens.
"I'm sorry."
Daenerys laughed once, sharp and broken. "Sorry?" she echoed, and the word sounded like an insult. Did sorry stop the spear? Did sorry pull him out of the water? Jon's scars warmed, an involuntary flare. He forced it down. "No," he admitted. Daenerys' gaze finally lifted to him, and Jon saw it. Rage like a blade, grief like an ocean, and beneath both, fear, raw and stubborn. That she would lose the only things in the world that had ever truly been hers. "He's out there now," she whispered, and her voice made it sound like a curse. Cold inside him, blue in his eyes. Her hand tightened around the scale until her knuckles went white. "My dragon." Jon felt something twist in his chest, a strange echo of her pain that startled him. He had watched Viserion die and felt a snap inside himself, a tearing he could not explain. It wasn't his dragon, it wasn't his bond, and yet his body remembered it like a wound. "I felt it," Jon said, and the admission came before he could stop it. Daenerys' eyes narrowed. "Felt what?" Jon's throat tightened. "When he fell," Jon said hoarsely. "When the spear hit. When he stopped." He swallowed. It was like something tore. Tyrion's gaze sharpened, the way it did when a truth surfaced unexpectedly. Daenerys stared at Jon as if he had slapped her. Then her voice dropped, dangerous and quiet. "Don't take him from me," she said. Jon flinched. "I'm not trying to." Daenerys stood abruptly, cloak whispering against stone. She moved closer, close enough Jon could smell smoke on her hair, could see the thin sheen of tears she refused to let fall. "They are all I have left," she said softly. "They are my children, my power, my proof that I wasn't a girl sold like meat." Her gaze burned. "And now winter has one of them." Jon's breath smoked. He held her gaze because looking away felt like cowardice. "Then you come north," he said quietly. "And you burn him." Daenerys' mouth tightened. "And if I do," she said, "what then? The realm sees dragons over Winterfell and calls me savior? Or conqueror? What happens when they hear another Targaryen lives?" One the dragons bow their heads toward. The words landed like a blade turned sideways, pressing into an old bruise. Jon's jaw clenched. "I don't want your throne," he said again, because he had nothing else to offer that didn't sound like threat. Daenerys' eyes flashed. "Want is not the only thing that matters," she hissed. "The world chooses for you. Men choose for you. Stories choose for you." Jon's scars pulsed with heat. "Then we make a different story," he said. "One where we don't die arguing while the dead walk." For a long moment, Daenerys stared at him. Then she turned away, shoulders rigid, and stared into the torches as if fire could answer questions better than men. Tyrion spoke softly, careful as a man stepping around broken glass. "We have something now we didn't have before," he said. "Proof the dead exist, yes, but also proof that they can take a dragon." His eyes flicked to Daenerys. "That means even your enemies will listen. Even Cersei." Daenerys' hands tightened at her sides. "Cersei will listen," she said, voice hollow. "And then she will lie." Jon stepped closer by a fraction. "Let her lie," he said. "Just get her to stop fighting long enough for us to fight the dead." Daenerys turned back to him, gaze sharp. "And after?" she demanded. "After the dead?" Jon held her eyes. "If we live," he said quietly, "then we argue about crowns. Not before." Daenerys' mouth tightened. She looked at the scale in her palm, then closed her fist around it as if sealing grief into iron. "Very well," she said at last. "We go to King's Landing." Jon exhaled slowly, smoke curling. Outside, rain hammered the stone as if the sea itself demanded entry. Inside, fire and grief sat in the same room and tried not to burn each other alive. King's Landing smelled different even at a distance. It smelled of smoke trapped in stone, of river rot, of people packed too tight and pretending it was civilization. Dragonstone's salt and sulfur faded behind them as their ships slid into darker waters and the land rose, crowded with watchtowers and walls. They did not bring dragons to the city's streets. Tyrion insisted on that, and Daenerys allowed it with the tight restraint of a woman swallowing fury. The dragons circled farther out, unseen but felt, like thunder held back behind cloud. The summit was set in the Dragonpit's ruins, because there was a grim poetry in bringing Dragonfire's heirs into the skeleton of where dragons had once been caged. The broken arches loomed overhead, stone ribs against gray sky. Wind moved through the open structure and made torches shudder, as if the place remembered old flames and missed them. Cersei Lannister arrived first, as if claiming timing was a kind of victory. She sat on a raised platform with her posture perfect, her mouth set in a calm line that never betrayed fear. Qyburn stood at her shoulder like a patient spider. Behind them, Ser Gregor Clegane, the mountain, was a silent wall of armor, visor empty, presence wrong in a way that made Jon's skin crawl. Jaime Lannister stood a step lower, jaw tight, eyes restless as if he could not decide whether to be brother or enemy. Euron Greyjoy lounged nearby with his smirk and his sea salt arrogance, iron-born guards at his back. He looked like a man who believed storms were loyal because he had survived them. Daenerys entered with controlled grace, cloak dark, hair braided, eyes hard. Tyrion walked beside her, his face carefully neutral, like a man balancing a cup of poison on a tray. Missandei moved with her calm dignity. Grey Worm and Unsullied followed, spears upright. Davos Seaworth walked with the wary posture of someone who had stood before too many kings and watched too many of them die. Jon Snow came last, not because he wanted drama, but because the cage came with him. It was dragged on a sled by men with strained faces. Heavy cloth covered it, but even covered, it felt wrong, like a breathing thing under a shroud. The iron clinked faintly with the Wights' movement. A low, hungry rattling seeped through fabric like a heartbeat. Cersei's gaze went to the covered cage at once. She did not flinch. She did not show curiosity. She looked at it the way she looked at all threats, as something that existed to be controlled or destroyed. "You've brought a gift," she said, voice smooth. Tyrion stepped forward, hands open. "A demonstration," he corrected gently. "One that will benefit all of us." Cersei's eyes flicked to Jon. Her gaze sharpened, and Jon felt the weight of it like a blade tip. "You," she said, as if tasting something unpleasant. "The bastard who thinks he can lecture queens." Jon's jaw tightened. "I'm not here to lecture," he said. "I'm here because the dead are coming."
Euron tiu.
"Khaled, the dead," he echoed, as if it were a joke told at a tavern. Cersei's mouth curved faintly. "I've heard northern men tell stories," she said. "They like to make winter sound like a god, so they can excuse their failures." Daenerys's eyes flashed. "He is not lying," she said, and the certainty in her tone made even Jaime glance at her. Cersei leaned back slightly. "Then show me," she said, and the words were a challenge and a command. Tyrion looked at Jon, then nodded once. Jon stepped toward the cage. His breath smoked faintly in the cool air. He could feel the torches nearby lean toward him, eager, and he forced himself to ignore it. He pulled the heavy cloth away. The iron cage stood revealed, wet with condensation, bars thick. Inside, the Wight thrashed, chains rattling, blue eyes burning like cold coals. It slammed itself against the bars and reached toward the living as if it could smell their warmth from yards away. A few of Cersei's guards shifted, faces paling. Euron's smirk faltered for half a heartbeat. Jaime's eyes widened slightly, recognition and dread mixing. Cersei's expression did not change. Only her fingers tightened on the arm of her chair. "Release it," she said. Tyrion swallowed hard. "Your grace." "Release it," Cersei repeated, and the calm in her voice was the calm of a woman who did not believe in monsters unless she owned them. Jon's hand tightened on the cage latch. Daenerys's posture stiffened. Grey Worm's spear tip dipped slightly, ready. Jon met Tyrion's eyes. Tyrion's look was a warning and a plea at once. "Don't let this become slaughter." Jon turned back to the cage. "If you want proof," he said, voice flat, "you'll get it," and he lifted the bolt. The Wight moved like a spring released. The moment the bolt lifted, the dead thing slammed into the cage door with such force the iron shrieked. Chains snapped taut. The Wight squeezed through the gap like hunger finding a crack, teeth clacking, nails scraping stone, blue eyes locked on the nearest warmth. A Lannister guard lunged with a spear out of reflex. The Wight caught the spear shaft in dead hands and yanked, pulling the man forward. Teeth sank into his throat. Blood sprayed, hot and real, and the guard's scream was the first honest sound in the dragon pit. Chaos rippled outward like fire in dry brush. Guards drew steel. Unsullied spears tilted. Euron Greyjoy stumbled back, his smirk gone, eyes wide with a man's first true fear. Jaime Lannister drew his sword, stepping forward instinctively, face tight with disbelief that tried to become action. Cersei did not move. Her eyes stayed on the Wight like a woman watching a knife approach her throat and deciding whether to flinch was beneath her. Only her jaw tightened, the smallest tell of a crack. Jon surged forward as the Wight tore free of its chain slack, lunging for another guard. He caught the chain line and yanked hard, dragging the dead thing's momentum sideways. The Wight snapped at him, teeth clacking inches from his wrist. Sandor Clegane, the Hound, moved with brutal efficiency, hooking the chain and throwing his weight into it as if wrestling a rabid dog. He did not speak. He did not joke. He looked like a man staring straight into the kind of nightmare he had spent his life pretending he could outrun. The Wight flailed, inhuman strength jerking chain links. It lunged again, reaching for Cersei's platform as if drawn by power's heat. Jaime stepped in and slashed. Steel bit dead flesh and did nothing but slow it. The Wight turned on him, snapping, and Jaime's face paled as he realized this was not a man he could kill with a clean strike. This was not a duel. This was a thing. Jorah Mormont drove a dragonglass dagger into the Wight's side. The dead thing convulsed and shrieked soundlessly. Black dust and brittle fragments burst from the wound like shattered glass. The Wight staggered, but did not fall. It snapped blindly, furious now, reaching for anything it could tear. Qyburn watched with cold fascination, head tilted slightly, as if this were an experiment in his personal laboratory. His eyes did not show horror. They showed curiosity. "See!" Jon shouted, voice torn by the chaos. "It doesn't stop." The Wight lunged again, and the Hound and Jon hauled on the chains, forcing it back. Unsullied stepped in with disciplined violence, spears angled to pin. A dragonglass point pierced the Wight's shoulder, and that shoulder shattered, black dust spraying. The Wight fell to one knee, still fighting, still snapping, still reaching. Jaime stared at the shattered flesh with something like sick understanding. Cersei's voice cut through, calm and cold. "Enough," she said. "It's not shouted. It did not need to be." Her word landed like a hammer because everyone in King's Landing had learned that Cersei's calm meant she had already decided who would die. Jon drove dragonglass into the Wight's skull. The dead thing shattered. It broke apart in a violent collapse, head cracking into black dust, ribs splintering like brittle ice, limbs crumbling into fragments that scattered across stone. The blue in its eyes went out instantly, like a candle snuffed. Silence fell in the wake of violence, heavy and stunned. Only the dying guard's wet gurgle lingered, and even that faded quickly as life left him. The Hound stood panting, chain still in hand, face hard. Jaime stared at the dust on his blade. Euron swallowed, eyes darting as if searching for another joke and finding none. Daenerys stood rigid, her face a mask of controlled fury and grief. Jon's breath smoked. The torches flickered near him as if restless. Qyburn stepped forward, calm as a man inspecting a corpse at a feast. He knelt and collected a severed hand that had not fully crumbled. Blackened and stiff, fingers curled like claws. He lifted it as if it were a prize. Cersei's gaze stayed on the hand, then flicked to Daenerys and Jon. For the first time, something like uncertainty slid behind her eyes. She had seen. Now she had to choose whether fear could outweigh pride. They stood in the dragon pit like ghosts arguing over who deserved to rule the ruins. Cersei descended from her platform with deliberate steps, her posture perfect, her face unreadable. Jaime followed a half-step behind, eyes flicking constantly, watching unsullied spears, watching dragons he could not see, watching his sister's mouth for the moment it might twist into cruelty. Daenerys held herself still, but Jon could feel the heat of her rage in the air like a forge waiting for breath. Tyrion stood between them by instinct more than choice, because Tyrion had spent his life standing between blades and hoping words would hold. Qyburn hovered near Cersei, the Wight's severed hand wrapped carefully in cloth like a relic. His eyes shone with something that was not fear and not respect. Hunger, a different kind of hunger. Euron Greyjoy's smirk had returned, smaller now, sharper, as if he had decided fear was only another flavor of entertainment. Cersei's gaze moved across Daenerys and Jon slowly. "So," she said at last, voice smooth, "the dead exist." Jon's jaw tightened. "They exist," he agreed, "and they're coming." Cersei looked at him as if he were an annoyance that had learned how to speak. "You want me to fight your war," she said, "while you and your dragon queen gather my enemies under a banner of righteousness." Daenerys's eyes flashed. "This isn't about banners," she said. "This is about survival." Cersei's mouth curved faintly. "Everything is about banners," she replied. "Survival is simply the excuse men use to paint their ambition as virtue." Jon felt heat surge under his ribs. The torches nearby leaned briefly toward him, then steadied. He forced his breath slow. "If you don't fight," he said, voice low, "you'll die anyway." Cersei's eyes hardened. "I've died already," she said softly, and the words carried the weight of children's graves. "Not in body, perhaps, but enough to know what threats sound like." Tyrion's voice was careful. "Sister," he began, and the words sounded like a plea before he could stop it. "This is real. If you delay..." Cersei's gaze cut to him like a knife. "Do not call me that," she said. Tyrion swallowed, lips pressing tight. "If you delay," he corrected, "the dead will be at your gates. No walls will hold them. No gold will bribe them." Cersei's eyes flicked to Qyburn's wrapped hand, then back. "And if I agree," she said, "what do I get in return? Mercy? Your dragon queen's forgiveness? The honor of dying beside you?" Daenerys stepped forward a fraction, voice hard. "You get to live," she said. "You get to keep your city from becoming a cemetery." Cersei's smile was thin. "And afterward?" she asked softly. Jon's throat tightened. He knew what she was doing, dragging them back into the realm's familiar poison. If they promised nothing, she would refuse. If they promised too much, she would use it. "We deal with the dead first," Jon said. Afterward you take my throne," Cersei finished, at voice calm. Daenerys's posture stiffened. "Your throne is not my priority," she said, and Jon felt the lie in it even if Daenerys believed her own words in this moment. Could be both true and untrue. The world was rarely clean. Cersei's gaze slid to Jon. "And you?" she asked, voice almost curious. "Will you swear to her? Will you kneel like the rest of the realm will, once her dragons burn enough cities into obedience?" Jon felt the eyes of everyone on him. Daenerys, Tyrion, Jaime, even Euron's amused stare. He felt the weight of his name like a stone in his chest. He remembered Sansa's letter. He remembered the North kneeling. He remembered promising not to trade their necks for pride. He also remembered the dead. The blue eyes, the dragon falling. "I will fight the dead," Jon said. "I will not lie." Cersei's brows lifted. "Not lie," she echoed, amused. "How refreshing." Daenerys's gaze sharpened. "Jon," she warned softly, because she could see the trap too late. Cersei stepped closer, voice still calm. "Swear," she demanded. "Swear you will not take arms against me. Swear you will not fight me after the dead. Swear you are not here to help her take my crown." Jon's jaw clenched. He could feel the torch's heat tug at his chest as if urging him to burn the lie away. "I can't," Jon said, and the honesty tasted like blood. Because if she fights the dead with us, she'll need the realm united. And if you stand in the way of that, Cersei's eyes went cold. So you will fight me, she said softly. Jon's breath smoked. If you force it, he said. Daenerys' posture went rigid, fury tightening like a chain. Tyrion's face went pale. Jaime's eyes widened slightly, disbelief and dread mixing. The same look he'd worn when the Wight lunged. Cersei stared at Jon a long moment, then looked at Daenerys. You choose fine allies, she said. Daenerys' voice was tight. He's honorable, she said, and the word sounded almost like an accusation. Cersei's mouth twisted. Honor will get you all killed, she murmured. For a heartbeat, the Dragonpit felt like a knife's edge. Then Cersei turned away abruptly, cloak snapping. She walked a few steps, stopped, and looked back over her shoulder. I will send my armies north, she said. Tyrion's breath escaped in a shaky exhale. Daenerys' eyes narrowed with suspicion. Cersei's smile was thin as a razor. Because I will not die to ice demons while you two play at being saviors. Her gaze flicked to Jon once more. Go! Jaime stared at her, stunned, as if he could not believe the words had come out of her mouth. Euron chuckled softly, delighted by the tension. Cersei walked out of the dragon pit with Qyburn and the mountain at her back, leaving promises hanging in the cold air like smoke. Jon watched her go and felt only dread. Because Cersei Lannister did not give ground without planting a knife beneath it. Jaime followed her out like a man chasing a ghost. The corridor outside the dragon pit was colder than the pit itself, the stones sweating damp, torchlight trembling in the wind that slipped through cracks. Cersei walked with measured steps, as if she had not just faced death and dragons and still decided pride mattered more than fear. The mountain's armor clinked softly behind her. Qyburn drifted like a shadow, hands clasped, the wrapped white hand held close as if it were a holy relic. Jaime caught up and grabbed Cersei's arm. Are you mad? He hissed, voice raw. Cersei stopped, turned, and looked at him with calm contempt. Let go, she said. Jaime's fingers tightened. You said you'd send the armies, he breathed. You said you'd help. Cersei's eyes did not blink. I said what they needed to hear, she replied. Jaime stared at her, as if the truth might finally break through the shape of his love. They're real, he said. The dead. You saw it. Cersei's mouth curved faintly. Of course they're real, she said softly. And now I know something else that is real. Her gaze slid toward the torchlight behind him as if she could see through stone. They will fight them. They will bleed. They will weaken. Jaime's stomach dropped. No, he whispered. Cersei stepped closer, voice quiet and lethal. Yes, she said. While they march north to die in snow, we will survive here. We will keep our strength. We will keep our throne. Her hand lifted, touching Jaime's cheek briefly with chilling tenderness. And when they come back, if they come back, we will finish what they started. Jaime's eyes burned. You're going to let the world die, he whispered. Cersei's gaze hardened. The world has never cared whether I lived, she said. Why should I care whether it dies? Jaime's breath shook. Because you're not a monster, he said, and the desperation in it made the words ugly. Cersei's smile was small. I am a queen, she corrected. Behind her, Qyburn shifted slightly, eager to offer some quiet suggestion. Jaime's gaze flicked to him. You, he spat, and his voice shook with disgust. You brought that hand like a toy. Qyburn bowed his head slightly. It is fascinating, he murmured, and useful. Jaime's stomach turned. It's death, he said. Cersei lifted her chin. It's a weapon, she said, and the echo of Daenerys' earlier word made Jaime flinch as if slapped. Euron Greyjoy's laughter drifted from farther down the corridor, lazy and amused. He leaned against stone as if the whole world were a joke he intended to survive. When Jaime looked at him, Euron's smile widened. You chose your side, Golden Man, Euron drawled, and your side is the winning one. Always. Jaime looked back at Cersei and saw it. saw the emptiness behind her eyes where mercy should have lived. The woman he had loved had been shaped into something sharp and cold, and he had helped forge her. He had done that. His fingers loosened on her arm. Cersei's gaze soft. Ned by a fraction, mistaking his slackening for surrender. "Good," she murmured. Jaime stepped back instead. "No," he said, voice breaking. Cersei's eyes narrowed. "No." Jaime's throat tightened. He saw the Wights' teeth sinking into flesh. He heard Viserion's dying scream as if it had carried into this corridor. He felt, suddenly, the weight of all the lives he had spent pretending didn't matter. "I swore an oath," he said hoarsely, "to protect the realm." Cersei laughed quietly. "The realm?" she echoed, mocking. "You're still clinging to that lie." Jaime's eyes burned. "It's not a lie," he whispered. "Not anymore." Cersei's face went cold. "If you leave," she said softly, "you die." Jaime stared at her. Grief and love and disgust braided so tight he could barely breathe. "If I stay," he whispered, "we all die." He turned away. Behind him, Cersei's voice was a hiss. "Jaime!" He did not stop. The corridor stretched ahead, torchlight flickering, wind biting. Each step felt like ripping a chain from his own ribs. Behind him, Cersei stood very still, her face composed, her eyes hard. And in her shadow, Qyburn's mouth moved in a quiet whisper to the mountain, as if already planning how to remove another piece from the board. They left the dragon pit with victory that tasted like ash. Tyrion kept glancing back as if expecting Cersei's promise to turn into an arrow in his spine. Daenerys walked with her chin lifted, but Jon could see the tension in her shoulders. The restraint of a woman forcing herself not to burn the city simply because it existed. Missandei stayed close, calm but alert. Gray worms unsullied formed a tight column around them, spears upright, eyes scanning every shadow as if the streets themselves might bite. The empty cage sat behind them like a discarded wound, iron smeared with blood, chains scattered. Proof had been shown, proof had been believed, and still the world felt no safer. Davos muttered under his breath as they descended the broken steps. "She's lying," he said flatly. Tyrion's mouth tightened. "Of course she's lying," he replied, as if stating the sky was blue. "It's what she does when she breathes." Daenerys's gaze snapped to him. "Then why did we come?" she demanded, and there was real fury in it now, not just at Cersei but at the entire realm's stubborn stupidity. Jon's breath smoked faintly. "Because now your war is not just your war," he said. "Now the realm has seen what's coming." He paused, then added, because honesty was the only weapon he trusted. "Even if Cersei lies, others will hear." Daenerys's eyes narrowed. "And if they don't?" she asked. Jon looked north, beyond the city's walls, beyond the horizon. He could feel the cold pressure at the edge of his mind like a bruise that would not heal. "Then we fight without them," he said. Tyrion's voice was quiet. "We should leave," he said. "Now, before she changes her mind about letting us walk away." Daenerys's jaw clenched. "Let her try to stop me," she murmured, and Jon saw Drogon's fire in her eyes, beautiful and terrifying. They reached the edge of the dragon pit grounds where the wind carried city stench again. Farther out, beyond sight, dragons roared, restless, furious, sensing their mother's anger. The sound rolled through the air like distant thunder. Jon walked beside Daenerys in silence for a while. He felt the city's torches flare and gutter as they passed, reacting subtly to his heat. He kept his hands tucked in his sleeves so no one could see. Daenerys spoke without looking at him. "She will not help," she said quietly. Jon did not answer at once. He remembered Cersei's calm. He remembered Jaime's face, horror and something like shame. He remembered Qyburn's fascinated eyes. "She might not," Jon said finally, "but Jaime will." Daenerys's head turned sharply. "Jaime Lannister?" she repeated, disgust and disbelief mixing. Jon nodded once. "He looked at the dead like he understood," he said. "Not like Cersei. He's not her." Tyrion's gaze flicked to Jon, startled. "You saw that," he murmured. Jon's mouth tightened. "I saw a man who's tired of pretending," he said. Daenerys stared ahead again, jaw clenched. "Tired men still betray," she said. Jon did not argue because she was right too. They reached their escort and horses, and the column formed again. As they moved toward the harbor where their ships waited, Jon felt the weight of the city pressing in. Stone and pride and cruelty wrapped into one. He thought of Winterfell, of Sansa, of the wall groaning, of Viserion's blue eyes snapping open. Daenerys' voice came low, almost to herself. "If she will not fight," she said, "then I will burn her." Tyrion flinched. Davos swore under his breath. Jon turned his head slightly and looked at Daenerys. "Not yet," he said quietly. Daenerys' eyes flashed. "Not yet," she echoed, and the words were dangerous because they agreed. They walked on. Behind them, King's Landing stood arrogant and blind beneath gray haze, as if it believed the world ended at its walls. Ahead, the north waited, and in the dark beyond the wall, winter prepared to march with a dragon of ice. They sailed away from King's Landing as if fleeing a sickness. The city shrank behind them into a smear of gray stone and smoke, its walls catching weak sunlight and throwing it back without warmth. Even at a distance, Jon could feel its arrogance, the way it sat on the river mouth like a king on a throne, convinced it was the world's center. He wondered how long that conviction would last when winter arrived with blue flame. Davos stood at the rail, gaze fixed north, jaw clenched. He looked like a man watching a storm line he knew would hit his home. Tyrion leaned near the stern, watching the city fade with an expression that was equal parts relief and dread. "She will betray us," he murmured, not to anyone in particular. "Let her," Daenerys said, voice clipped. She stood near the bow, hair braided tight, eyes hard. The sea wind snapped her cloak like a banner. "When the dead come, her betrayal will taste like ash." Tyrion's mouth tightened. "It may taste like ash to all of us," he said softly. Jon stood a few paces away, hands gripping the rail. The wood was cold and wet, but it warmed beneath his palms. Steam rose faintly and vanished. He did not look down at it. He looked at the horizon. Above the ship, wings beat. Drogon and Regal flew low over gray water, shadows sliding across waves. Drogon's presence felt heavier now, older, angrier. Regal's scream echoed occasionally, sharp with grief. The gap in the sky where Viserion should have been made the air feel wrong. Daenerys watched her dragons with a gaze that tried to be possessive and became sorrow instead. Jon felt the grief radiate off her like heat from a forge. It made his scars itch. He did not know what to say to her. Words felt small. They always did when death had taken something too large. Tyrion approached Jon quietly, as if worried sudden movement might spark something. "Jaime will come," he said under his breath. Jon glanced at him. "You believe it too?" Tyrion's smile was thin. "Jaime is many things," he said, "but he is not his sister." He paused, then added, "And he's always had a taste for doing the right thing at the worst possible time." Jon exhaled slowly. Smoke curled from his lips, thin and steady. "Then we'll take whatever help we can get," he said. Daenerys turned her head slightly, hearing them without trying. "Help?" she echoed, voice cold. "I have dragons." Jon looked at her. "Dragons can die," he said quietly. Daenerys' eyes flashed, pain and fury braided. "And so can kings," she snapped. Jon felt the truth of that settle heavy. He had already died once. He did not fear death the way he had. He feared what his death might unleash now, what the fire that brought him back might do if it was left without the man it wore. "We go north," Jon said, voice steady. "We mine the dragonglass we can. We arm the living. We hold the wall as long as it holds. And when it breaks..." He paused because saying it felt like calling it. "We fight."
Daenerys' gaz.
He fixed on the horizon. "I will burn the dead," she said. Jon nodded. "And I will lead men through the smoke," he replied. For a moment, The wind softened, and the sea's roar felt distant. Daenerys spoke without looking at him. "If you are truly Aegon Targaryen," she said quietly, "then the realm will want you to take what I came to claim." Jon's jaw tightened. "Let it want," he said. "I don't." Daenerys's laugh was sharp. "You don't get to choose," she whispered. Jon's breath smoked. "I chose once," he said. "I chose the watch. I chose duty. I died for it." He turned his head slightly toward her. "I'm choosing the living now. That's the only crown I'll wear." Daenerys stared at him a long moment, and Jon saw something in her eyes shift. Not trust, not love, not yet. Something like reluctant respect, the kind you gave a blade that could cut you but might also save you. Above them, Drogon roared, and the sound rolled over gray water like a vow. The ship pushed north, cutting through waves toward a war that would not wait. Behind them, King's Landing sat smug in the haze. Ahead, winter sharpened its teeth. The wall remembered fire. It groaned in the night like a wounded beast, ice shifting, old spells tightening and loosening with the strain of a world changing. The sky above it was starless, smothered by cloud, the kind of darkness that made men forget what hope looked like. Below, in the shadowed snow, white walkers stood in silent ranks. Their armor caught faint moonless light and returned it as a cold sheen. Spears of ice rose like a forest of frozen teeth. Wights waited behind them in endless patience, blue eyes scattered across darkness like fallen stars. At their front stood the Night King. He lifted his gaze to the wall not with hatred, not with urgency, but with calm certainty. Time belonged to him. Winter belonged to him. Fear belonged to men, and men had always broken. Then a shadow passed overhead. Undead Viserion swept above the ice cliff with wings that beat too stiffly, too precisely, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. His golden scales were dulled by frost and death. His eyes burned bright blue, wrong and relentless. Blue light glowed in his throat, pulsing with cold fire. The Night King raised one hand. Viserion banked, obedient. The dragon opened his jaws. Blue flame poured out, silent at first, then screaming as it struck the wall. The ice did not simply melt. It shattered. It screamed in cracks that ran like lightning across the cliff face. Blue fire ate into the wall's surface, carving trenches through ancient frost, turning solid magic into falling shards. Snow exploded outward in white clouds. The air filled with the sharp stink of cold fire and broken spell. Deep inside the wall, something flickered. Not blue, red gold. For a heartbeat, faint veins of warm light threaded through the ice far beneath the surface, pulsing like blood under skin. Old fire, bound into old ice, waking under assault. The wall had been made with more than cold. It had been written with flame. The Night King watched the red gold flicker with a faint tilt of his head, as if acknowledging an old enemy's ghost. Viserion's blue flame hammered again, harder. The red gold veins flickered faster, then dimmed, overwhelmed, as if smothered by winter's stolen fire. A deep crack split the air like thunder. A section of the wall gave way, collapsing inward in an avalanche of ice and shattered spell. The sound rolled across the frozen world like a drumbeat calling war. The White Walkers did not cheer. The dead did not howl. They moved. Wights surged toward the breach in an endless tide, climbing over falling ice, slipping and rising, hands clawing at stone, hunger dragging them forward. The Night King lowered his hand. Viserion circled above the breach, blue flame still glowing faintly in his throat like a promise. Far away, across sea and storm and distance, Jon Snow's fire stirred as if it had felt a blade touch its skin. A pulse of heat ran through the old bond beneath the world. Fire answering fire, cold answering fire, the ancien. T-struggle tightening like a noose. The wall's last red gold flicker died in the crushed ice. And winter, armed now with Dragonfire that burned blue, began to pour into the realm of the living.